Okay, here we go. Segment number 3. And it could be argued that the government, by that I mean the law by which we've chosen to govern ourselves, is a reflection of society's greatness, or a lack thereof. That great societies pass great laws, and very few of them. For in great societies, very few laws are actually necessary. Still, truly lawless societies are primitive societies, where might is right. Laws are man's attempt to level the playing field, to ensure that what is truly right will prevail. Weakness or strength notwithstanding, without codes of behavior upon which we mutually agree, how could we coexist? I am not struggling or suggesting a world with no codes of behavior, no agreements. No, I'm suggesting that you and your agreements and codes be based on a higher understanding and a grander definition of self-interest. What most laws actually do say is what the most powerful among you have as their vested interest. Let's just look at one example: smoking. Now, the law says you cannot grow or use a certain kind of plant, hemp, because, so government tells you, it is not good for you. Yet the same government says it is all right to grow and use another kind of plant, tobacco. Not because it is good for you. Indeed, the government itself says it is bad, but presumably because you always have done so. The real reason that the first plant is outlawed and the second is not has nothing to do with its health. It has to do with economics. And that is to say power. 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 Your laws, therefore, do not reflect what your society thinks of itself and wishes to be. Your laws reflect where the power is. No fair. You picked a situation where the contradictions are apparent. Most situations are not like that. On the contrary, most are. Then what is the solution? I'll tell you the solution. To have a few laws which are really limits as possible. The reason the first weed is outlawed is only ostensible about health. The truth is, the first weed is no more addictive and no more a health risk than cigarettes or alcohol, both of which are protected by the law. Why is it then not outlawed? Because if it were grown, half of the cotton growers, nylon and rayon manufacturers, and timber product people in the world would go out of business. Hemp happens to be one of the most useful, strongest, toughest, longest lasting materials on our and your planet. You cannot produce a better fiber for clothes, a stronger substance for ropes, an easier to grow and harvest source for pulp. You cut down hundreds and thousands of trees per year to give yourselves Sunday papers so that you can read about the decimation of the world's forests. Hemp could provide you with the millions of Sunday papers without cutting down one tree. Indeed, it could substitute for so many resource materials at 1/10 the cost. Are you hearing me, people? 1/10 the cost. And it's better than the other resources that we're using. And that is the catch. Somebody loses money if this miraculous plant, which also has extraordinary medicinal purposes and properties, incidentally is allowed to be grown, and that is why marijuana is illegal in your country. It is the same reason you have taken so long to mass produce electric cars, provide affordable, sensible health care, and use solar heat and solar power in every home. You've had the wherewithal and the technology to produce all of these things for years. We were able to do this for years, people. Why then do you not have them? Look to see who would lose money if you did. There you will find your answer. This is the great society of which you are so proud. Your great society has to be dragged, kicking, and screaming to consider the common good. Whenever common good or collective good is mentioned, everyone yells, "Communism!" In your society, if providing for the good of many does not produce a huge profit for someone, the good of many is more often than not ignored. This is true not only in your country but also around the world. The basic question facing humankind, therefore, is, can self-interest ever be replaced by the best interests, the common interests of humankind? If so, how? Let me check the time here. We're doing all right. Is this making sense, folks? I hope so. I hope someone's hearing me, and I hope we can spread this like wildfire and get this going, and that you guys will back me 125% and will get me in the White House in 2012, and I will make things happen. I will bring true change. I will bring everlasting change. I will bring immortality in a twinkling of an eye. Now, in the United States, this is true not only in your country, but around the world. In the United States, you have tried to provide for the common interests, the best interests, through laws. You have failed miserably. Your nation is the richest, most powerful on earth, and it has one of the highest infant mortality rates. Why? Because poor people cannot afford quality prenatal and postnatal care, and your society is profit-driven. I cite this is as just one example of your miserable failure. The fact that your babies are dying at a higher rate than most other industrialized nations in the world should bother you. It does not. That says volumes about where your priorities are as a society. Other countries provide for the sick and needy, the elderly, and the infirm. You provide for the rich and wealthy, the influential, and the well-placed. 85% of the retired Americans live in poverty. Many of those Americans, older Americans, and most people on low income, use the local hospital emergency room as their family doctor, seeking medical treatment under only the most dire of circumstances and receiving virtually no preventative health care maintenance at all. There is no profit, you see, in people who have little to spend. They've worn out their usefulness, and this is your great society? You make things sound pretty bad, yet America has done more for the underprivileged and the unfortunate, both here and abroad, than any other nation on earth. America has done much. That is observably true. Yet do you know that as a percentage of its gross national product, the United States provides proportionately less for foreign aid than many much smaller countries? The point is that before you allow yourself to become too self-congratulatory, perhaps you should look at the world around you. For if it is the best your world can do for the less fortunate, you all have much to learn. You live in a wasteful, decadent society. You've built into virtually everything you can make what your engineers call planned obsolescence. Cars cost 3 times as much as last a third as long. Clothes fall apart after the 10th wearing. You pitch chemicals into your food so that they can stay on the shelves longer, even if it means you stay on the planet shorter. You support, encourage, and enable sports teams to pay obscene salaries for the ridiculous efforts, while teachers, ministers, and researchers fighting to find a cure for the diseases which kill you go begging for money. You throw away more food each day in your nation's